and welcome to my video on how to rebuild a carburetor on a 2004 Kawasaki ZZR600, also known as the ZX600-E12. This procedure can be used for both the D and E motorcycle, with only slight variations required for each one. For this, I'm going to be using the All Balls Racing Carburetor Rebuild Kit, part number 26-1718. I contacted All Balls Racing and wanted to do a video with them so that I could go over this detailed process. The reason that I specifically chose All Balls Racing is simply because of how complete their kit is and the quality of the kit. This is the third time I've rebuilt these carburetors. I've used other kits before and I was not impressed with the quality of the O-rings. They actually deteriorated on me within just a couple of months of sitting within the gas. You can buy this kit through your local dealer, or you can call them at the number I have on the screen at this time. You can also contact them through their website, which I have on the screen as well as in the description. It's just allballsracing.com. One of the things that I really liked about All Balls Racing was just the comprehensive line of products. All Balls Racing offers the industry's most comprehensive line of bearing, seal, driveline, and suspension kits for on or off-road and for ATVs or UTVs. They will have you covered for your bearing and driveline component needs. Now let's just break into the kit real quick to show you what's included. So within this kit, the very first thing that we have here is going to be your float seat screws. And these typically end up going bad on you simply because they're sitting in gas, and you wouldn't think they would react badly, but they end up getting stuck, and you usually end up having to use a Dremel to cut a flathead on them to get them out. Then we have our float chamber O-rings. We've got some air pilot screw O-rings, as well as the additional O-rings that are needed for your gas supply tubes. Next in it is going to be screws for your chamber cap, float bowl bolts, and some air screw springs, as well as just little tiny ones in there. They're really hard to see, but the air pilot screw washers are in this bag as well. Next, we have our needle. It looks like we also have our float seat valves, our float valves, and the float seat O-rings and screens are pre-installed on these for us, which makes that process a lot easier. Then in the final bag, we also have our pilot air screw. We've got our main jets and our pilot low jets. That's going to be our slow right here, and that is for your quarter throttle on the bike. Note that the main jet holder is not included with this kit. So that actually includes an extreme amount of product for the motorcycle. Whenever you actually start looking at this, if you assembled this kit with genuine Kawasaki parts, you're talking about $200 per carb if you individually piece these together per carb to get this rebuild. This whole kit is considerably less than that, and you get all 4 carbs in one kit. That is why I went with All Balls Racing, is simply because of the amount of parts included with this kit. It is going to make rebuilding this so easy because it's all included. Here's some of the tools that you're going to need in order to complete this job. A test probe set or dental tool kit, a carburetor cleaning kit set, some type of a brush. An old toothbrush works really well, 3/8 inch and a 1/4 inch ratchet with extension, an 8mm, 10mm, 12mm, and 17mm socket, some needle nose pliers, a 3 and a 5mm hex wrench, a number 3 and a number 2 Phillips, various sizes of flatheads. You're going to want some WD-40, some type of carburetor and choke cleaner. I recommend the B12, it works really good. You're going to want the Chem Dip carburetor and parts cleaner. You're going to want some shop towels and a bucket to use for the various chemicals that you're going to be using and to store parts in. In order to get to the carburetors, we're first going to want to remove the seat. Then we're going to want to remove the screw here on both sides. And there's a screw here and a screw here. But before we do anything else, make sure that your gas is turned off from your tank into the bike itself. And there is an arrow here with off. You simply turn the knob until it's actually off. Now we take our Phillips screwdriver and we remove the bolt here, and we remove the bolt here. And the same bolts on the corresponding other side of the bike. Whenever you remove these, make sure that you keep the plastic washer with it. Now we're going to want to remove the overflow tube. Pull it down and out of the way. Where the fairing meets the tank, there is a rubber grommet and a plastic nipple that goes through and holds onto the rubber grommet. Just slowly work it back and forth and it will pop out. Do the same thing on the other side of the bike. Gently work it. Now we need to remove the fuel line that is coming to our shutoff valve. Whenever we pull the body panel away, we can see the line that's coming up here from the fuel pump. And then we have a clip that needs to be squeezed together and moved off. You can do it one of two ways. You can use some bendy pliers. You can also do it with regular pliers, straight needle nose. It's just a little bit more difficult if you don't have quite the angle. And if you've had your tube off recently, you can typically just give it a few twists and pulls and it comes right off. If you've not had your fuel line off recently, you can take a flat bladed screwdriver, put it in between the rubber and the metal of the petcock and twist the screwdriver. What you're looking to do is to break the rubber loose from the metal, and then you'll be able to pull the tube off. If you've tried that and it just doesn't work, you can take your needle nose, gently grab a hold of the tube, and you can rotate the tube ever so gently. Do not do it tight. You're not adding high amounts of pressure on it, or you're just going to be squeezing it against the pot metal. Just gently take it and pull it out and set it aside. Down here at the bottom we have a 12mm bolt. Just need to remove that. At the front of the tank we have two 8mm bolts that need to be removed. So now to finish the removal of the tank, we want to make sure that our flaps are out of the way from our rear plastics. Pull up on the tank, and underneath you're going to find that we have a connector here. This is for our fuel gauge, and if you pull on it, it actually just simply comes right off. Now we just work very gently around the plastics and pull the tank out, set it aside on a towel. Now we need to remove the airbox. For that, we're just going to squeeze the clip and remove the hose that's on top. And now we have 7 10mm bolts Now we just gently pick up the top of the airbox. And we remove the hose that's on the front. Set that aside. We're also going to remove our screen and our air filter. Set those aside as well. There is a rubber plug here. Simply pull the rubber plug out there and there. Here we have two 10mm bolts, one there and one here. Whenever we remove the covers, it allows us to put an extension with socket down through. You can use the number 3 Phillips if you want to, but I recommend a socket. On the airbox, we have an oil catch can for oil overflow within the system. There is no reason to undo it. It will come off with the bottom of the airbox. Up at the front right, there is a tube that comes off, a hose, and that actually is very critical that it gets removed and properly put back on, as it helps this motorcycle run properly. Now we take the airbox and set it aside. Whenever we remove the throttle cables from the carburetors themselves, we need to have slack in those lines. Otherwise, they're extremely difficult to remove. Now, there's all sorts of different ways that you can do that. If your lines are loose enough, you can actually loosen all of the adjuster screws and pull them off. My cables are very tight, so you cannot do that. In order for me to have enough slack to remove it from the carburetor, I actually have to disassemble the throttle tube. Easiest way to do that is with an Allen wrench to go ahead and remove the front brake lever. Pull the front brake lever aside. Now on the back side, we have 2 Phillips screws that go through that hold the assembly together. Those need to be removed. Pull this apart, you have 2 screws. One longer that goes in the bottom, and one short that goes in the top. Now we can see our throttle cables here. Simply pull up and around and remove the barrel. Same thing for the return. And now our throttle tube is loose. This now gives us all the slack that we require. Now we have 8 bolts to remove that are 8mm. Be very careful whenever you disassemble the intake trumpets, because right in here you have a rubber gasket to create that seal. Now we're going to remove the breather tube. Now we have 4 clamps to remove that actually hold the carburetors to the engine. And for that, we're just going to use a Phillips screwdriver. Now we simply pull and rock it back and forth. And it will come out. Coming off the top here, you can see our cables. These are coming from the throttle. And this is what I was referring to earlier. So now that I have slack in it, I can easily pull them out. On the bottom side here, we have a fuel line we need to remove. There's typically a little bit of fuel in here, especially if you've ridden the bike recently, so make sure that you have a paper towel handy. So here we can see the barrels as they come around the butterfly actuators. You just have to line up the cable as it goes through the barrel, and it will push right out. For the choke line, we simply pull the choke over, pull out the cable, twist the barrel, and pull it out of the connector. Carburetor assembly is now fully removed from the motorcycle, and we're ready to start working on it. At this point, it is my recommendation to take paper towels and put them into the intake. This actually goes directly down into the engine. And the last thing we want to do is drop something down in there by accident.